ตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ So, blessings to you all. As you know, tomorrow will be the last day of the range retreat, the 3-month range retreat that Buddhist Sangha enter wherever they're living. And it's a time where both Sangha and lay community often put more determined effort, we hope, into their practice of keeping precepts, meditating, listening to Dhamma, studying Dhamma, meditating on the Dhamma. So it's a time maybe to review your 3 months range retreat this year. Perhaps you forgot all about it a long time ago, which is understandable. Maybe if you're not living in a monastery, it may not seem that relevant to you. But nevertheless, it's always a good time from time to time in your practice to review your efforts in these different areas of practice, to think and see what have you been accomplishing, or if you've been straying from the path, or how far have you strayed. Maybe some people begin the range retreat determined to meditate regularly for a certain period of time every day, and then gradually as time wears on they stop, give it up or reduce it. A smaller number of people may actually increase the amount of effort they put into their meditation practice. Nevertheless, whatever you've done the last 3 months, take some time just to reflect on your efforts in your practice. Maybe review what has worked, what didn't work, what brought you just more pain and difficulty, what seemed to bring you more insight or supported deeper states of samadhi arising, perhaps. For many people, they find a period of retreat, they're learning about the relationship between sila, how we speak, how we act, and the intentions lying behind our speech and our actions, and then meditation, and how the more effort we put into training ourselves in precepts, 5 precepts or 8 precepts, or the monastic precepts, the more we put into those practices, generally the more we get out of them. We get more awareness of our thoughts and intentions that lie behind our actions when you're keeping precepts. And that is keeping them sincerely, not just paying lip service to them, but when you use them as ways of training, then it makes you very much more aware of the intentions that are coming up in your mind, because you have to be on guard whether you're going to, in case you're going to break a precept. And that's one of the values of precepts. They're simple rules, guidelines that you take on knowingly, voluntarily, and then they help you to develop a sharpness, a clarity of your awareness, because you have to watch your intention. So maybe you've seen some progress in that area in your practice. You're keeping 5 precepts, or some people keep the 8 precepts. Maybe you've become a little bit more used to them, so that you don't have to think about them so much, or feel stressed about what you're about to say or do, because you quite naturally, your mind is coming in line with the practice of the precepts, and they just become more normal to you. If that's the truth, that's the case, then maybe you're feeling much more at ease with the precepts. They don't seem like a burden or something troublesome, as they often do when you begin practice. And the same with the practice of meditation. Maybe if you've been practicing meditation regularly the last few months, then you find now your mind and your body are more adjusted to the practice, and it's easier to sit down for a period of time. You've learned what you need to learn to support your meditation. So you found the right place to do it, the right sort of times of day to do it, and perhaps you've found some benefit. You're feeling more calm, more relaxed. Your awareness is a bit sharper than before. Your mind may be more steady, more patient than before. So perhaps you quite naturally want to continue practicing. Just because it's the end of the range retreat doesn't mean to say you have to stop. Or again, sometimes, unfortunately, we have to learn through mistakes and what doesn't work, and that's part of the practice as well. So sometimes we learn what didn't work. And sometimes we take something on and say, I'm going to meditate every morning for an hour, and then we get up and then we find we're too tired, or our body hurts, the knees hurt, the back hurts, and it's just making us more stressed. And you have to accept that. If something is not quite right and you're becoming more stressed, then you need to change, don't you? So we learn from the successes and the failures, the ups and the downs. And if you take the time to review your practice, then you're learning. And you can even learn from things that go wrong or didn't work. You can learn from the dukkha, the pain or any stress that you observed in yourself in your practice. And turn your dukkha, your suffering, into something useful. So don't be too discouraged if you found your meditation didn't seem to progress and your practice was difficult. And that's very normal, but you can still learn from the difficulties. It's all good. One thing that the Buddha emphasized, particularly in the practice, is the development of right view, right understanding of what we're doing. That usually improves over time through experience. And particularly we become more aware of karma. This Buddha's explanation of how we make karma in our life, how we create karma through our intentional action. In order to know karma and see it at work, see karma and result, or action and result at work, we need to be more mindful, pay more attention to our mind, our thoughts, our intentional thoughts, and how they influence our speech and actions. That often takes time. Over a period of time you learn to see or notice various habits, because a lot of our karma is habitual. And hopefully, if your mindfulness and your ability to contemplate your own experience improves, then you can go a little bit deeper into your mind and observe more closely karma at work. How the various thoughts and intentions that we follow, where they come from, how they arise in the mind, and what are the results, what are the consequences of our actions. You have this teaching about how there's different stages that a human makes karma. The reason we make karma is, first of all, is because we're still unenlightened and influenced by ignorance. We say unawareness, not knowing what we're doing, what's happening, what is leading to what, a cause and effect. We're not that aware of it. Even if we've read or heard the Dhamma before, often we're not fully aware of what we're doing because we keep falling into states of unawareness. We lose our mindfulness, we're not reflective, we're following habit. And this gives a chance for us to make karma, and for karma to come up into our experience, or intentional action to take place. Particularly negative intentions rooted in greed, anger, delusion. If we really knew that they caused us harm, we probably wouldn't speak or act or even think a thought rooted in greed, anger or delusion. You just wouldn't do it because you knew it would cause you suffering, and maybe suffering for others as well. But because we're not fully aware, we don't fully see, we do fall into making karma all the time. And particularly the negative karma that leads on to pain and suffering. It starts because we have what we call anusaya, underlying tendencies in our consciousness. This word the Buddha used, anusaya, means kilesas, greed, anger and delusion, these mental qualities, mental characteristics that are dormant. The word in Thai is they're asleep in our consciousness, our stream of consciousness. And many people complain how when they start practicing they notice how much karma, particularly negative karma they make, it seems to arise spontaneously out of the blue. Suddenly they're angry or caught into desire or worried. And it seems like it just comes from nowhere, it just spontaneously pops into their experience. And that can be quite disconcerting, worrying itself. We get worried because we can see ourselves getting caught into mental states of stress and suffering, and that makes us more stressed. We get angry because we're angry, we get worried because we're worried. We desire to get rid of our desires and so on. Often we are reacting over and over again to the kind of karma that we're making. And it's all coming from a lack of awareness, a lack of understanding. The starting point, the origin is these anusaya lying deep in our consciousness. Because we've followed greed, anger, delusion before, then there's tendencies ready, like seeds waiting to germinate. They're ready, they're dormant in our consciousness already. So we have to be quite brave, quite strong in ourselves when we start to look into this process that we make karma. Because you become aware you're already prone, or you already have a tendency to get angry, to get worried, to be afraid, to fall into desire for this and that. It's already there, so it's like you're starting at a loss. We don't like to admit that we have mental defilements. We don't like to admit that our mind is not perfect, that we're not perfect. But we have to. We have to be humble. We have to accept the truth that because we haven't practiced in the past, we've already built up many tendencies of mind, and they're just waiting there. If you could call them beings, they're like little beings waiting to get us, the bad guys waiting to get us. But it's in our own mind. It's just negative tendencies rooted in greed, anger, and delusion that we haven't yet rooted out, haven't yet abandoned. So that's the beginning of karma. You have these latent tendencies dormant or asleep in our consciousness, waiting for the right conditions to come up. The right conditions, well, every day, every moment of every day we're having sense contact, we're experiencing sense contact, aren't we? Right now you're seeing, or even if you've got your eyes closed, you're hearing my words. We have taste, smell, touch. Your body is touching, it's experiencing your clothing or whatever you're sitting on, or the air temperature is affecting your skin. You may have internal contact, aches and pains and things coming up in our body. And then of course there's the mind itself. We're constantly contacting mental objects, mental impressions, thoughts, ideas, memories and images coming up. So these are stimulating these latent tendencies, the anusaya, that are just sort of sleeping, waiting for something to happen. Maybe, I don't know, maybe like a firefighter or somebody in one of those kind of jobs where they're a first responder but nothing's happening, so they're just kind of sitting around playing cards or watching TV, waiting for things to happen, and then suddenly they get the call, there's a fire, or if there are paramedics, somebody's had a car accident and needs to be picked up or whatever. Suddenly you jump into action. The anusayas are a bit like that. They're just waiting there dormant, waiting for the right conditions for you to see that pleasant sight that will stimulate some greed, or see that unpleasant sight that will stimulate some aversion. Or similarly with sounds or tastes. Suddenly the kilesas spring out of their latent tendency state into action. So they start to arise. They call this pariyuttana kamma. It's the arising out of the dormant state because of the conditions, the sense contact takes place. That's going on every day, all the time. Much of it we miss. We're just too busy or confused or caught up into our thoughts or our conversations or doing this, doing that. So we miss it. But this is what we're investigating, and particularly when we're meditating, we're kind of using our own body and mind as a laboratory to experiment on, and we're really researching or examining closely what's going on. So you have a chance at this time, or whenever you're practicing mindfulness in the most disciplined way, most continuous way, you have a real chance to see this process at work. See karma arising. So you have sense contact, and then your mind starts to stir in one way or another, in one direction or another. Stir from its state of sleep or slumber. And it's like, I like that, I don't like that, I want this, I don't want that. This is good, that's bad. And then there's the actual kind of formation of karma, intention in the mind, based on whatever the craving, the kilesa that's being stimulated is. So it's greed, anger, delusion, in one way or another, sometimes alternating very quickly. It starts to solidify in your mind, forming the intention to act. That may simply be to think another thought based on the first sense impression you've had, and then you start thinking about it more with some form of desire, wanting or not wanting. And that may harden into actually wanting to speak or act, physically act, do something based on the intention as well. But it's the vitikkamma part of the process. It's the third sort of stage in the arising of karma. It's the actual forming of intention and then starting to act on that intention. But it could just be mental intention, just thinking, indulging in a particular train of thought. But it's the energy behind that, to keep thinking about that. It could be a memory, say you have an unpleasant memory of something that happened before. It pops into your mind, and if you're not fully aware, it stimulates some aversion, and then the aversion takes over as you start focusing your mind. We call this unwise attention, so unmindful, unwise attention on that original memory, say, that popped into your mind, and you start thinking, oh, that was really bad, I hated that. Could be conversation you had with someone, or something that happened to you, some unpleasant problem that arose in your day, in your life, and you start to think about it over and over again. Even if it's only brief, there may be a second or a third thought or a fourth thought, or sometimes it's many, many thoughts. This is the forming of an intention based on aversion in one case, or attraction, desire in another, or could be confusion. Maybe you hear something, you hear the words of somebody that you follow and respect, and you never question what they say because they're somebody you look up to. So you just hear their opinion, and straight away your mind believes what that person says, and just starts to form an opinion and a train of thought around what you've heard them say. But then it leads to sort of confusion in your mind because perhaps what they say doesn't make much sense. But you've taken it on, and now you're starting to think, react to it, and think about it. So there's many doorways and avenues that form part of this process of karma forming. But we make karma in this way. We start to react to sense impressions, and intentions form, and then that may lead on to action. And as you're meditating, you'll notice this. Occasionally, even it leads you to end your meditation. You'll notice if you have a really strong mood arise, when you're meditating, usually it's based on memory, sense impressions internally coming up. It may be so strong that it makes you want to move. You can't sit still anymore because you're so uncomfortable. So you actually stop meditating. You get up and you walk away, say. But later, if you review that, you might say, oh, now I can see it. That was the disturbing nature of that memory was so strong, I couldn't even sit still anymore. Sometimes it's a small thing. So many people notice when they have an unpleasant, painful memory or thought arise, and then they react to it. They actually move physically when they're meditating in reaction to that particular thought or memory. Maybe they don't get up and walk away, but they just have a bit of fidgeting, or move their hands, move their head, move their whatever. And we do that to physical pain as well, but it could be just a mental thought that one is reacting to with aversion, or a memory of something. And you might start to notice those things. Or desire for things that bring pleasure are the same. Strong desire also moves you physically. You might feel physically agitated because of desire to have some kind of experience some kind of sense pleasure. So one obvious one is, say you're sitting with your eyes closed and you think there's something desirable has come into your area, so you open your eyes because you want to see it. So maybe you hear your mobile phone buzzing, say, if you put it on silent or you put it on vibration, and you hear it vibrating, maybe you hoping that it's somebody or a message or something from somebody that may interest you or attract you, so you open your eyes to give up your meditation much too easily, and you look at the phone because of the power of attraction. This is something you can study, isn't it? You can study how you start to make karma based on sense impressions. Your greed, anger and delusion is stirred in that moment with a certain set of conditions, and then you maybe start moving mentally with thoughts, or may lead to verbalization, speaking, or lead to action. And what we notice is one thing leads to another. So if you react once with anger or greed, desire or confusion, well, it will be prompting further moments of greed, anger and delusion, and so it becomes more habitual, stronger tendency. So there's this process of the anusaya, the underlying tendency, being stirred when the conditions are right. the arising of an intention popping up into the mind, the coming together, the thinking, the speaking, the acting, and then you actually make karma, what we call karmapata. So it's actually good or bad karma, wholesome or unwholesome karma. When the anusaya, the latent tendencies have been fully stirred, you make karma. It could just be mental karma, so very difficult to distinguish because it's going on inside and you may be not very mindful, but sooner or later you might notice something's happening. You become caught into a mood, or you're particularly distracted, or something's taken over your mind. And of course that may lead on to speaking and acting. So there's this saying we used to have written on the tree in the monastery in Thailand, in Ajahn Chah's monastery. It said, be careful what you think, because what you think you may say. And what you may say you may do. So we have to be careful, because our actions have consequences. As we're meditating, we're getting to see this process, the step-by-step process from the origins through to the completion of karma. And that, bringing the mind to pay attention, establish mindfulness and examine what's going on. Well, that's obviously karma as well. We're still, as unenlightened beings, we're stuck in the world of karma, our world of our karma. But we can at least use what we have, so we can make good karma by establishing mindfulness and clear comprehension, and then investigating what's going on, becoming more aware, which is what you're doing in meditation. And as you become more aware and you see this process of greed, anger, delusion being stirred, your mind moving towards things, deciding to act or speak or do or just think, you become more clear in your mind of where suffering is coming from and why things happen the way they do, and you can start to turn back this experience where you feel like you just have these spontaneous moments, outbursts of anger or outbursts of greed, or strong opinions that pull you into some kind of argument or whatever it may be. You can start to unravel these experiences using the framework of karma and seeing greed, anger and delusion as the underlying causes, and then the results of different states of stress. It could be just minor agitation of mind, or it could be full-on moods that really burn you up and really make you miserable for a while, or repeatedly maybe. But you're using the framework of karma and then applying mindfulness and wisdom to see it in action. But this, of course, is good karma. So you're still making karma, but you're making good karma. That is what we call the path, Noble Eightfold Path. Bringing all your intelligence and your effort and discipline and practice and faith and all these good qualities to bear on your experience. And particularly when you're meditating, you can do this to unravel the whole process, expose it or reveal it to yourself. And then, of course, wisdom is the final result, understanding that says, oh, this is to be abandoned, this is to be changed or stopped. I should say no to this thought or this kind of karma. If you're seeing where suffering is coming from, you get motivated to want to change your karma for the better. The more aware you become, the more you want to change. And it's because we can change that the whole Buddhist path can work. Otherwise, if it was all fixed, it's just our destiny to be an angry person, be a greedy person, be miserable, be unhappy, be stressed, be this, be that, then there's no point practicing the Dhamma, is there? But over and over again, from the time of the Buddha right up till today, human beings have proven that they can learn from their experience, and they can use this teaching on karma to understand better how to remove suffering from the experience and prevent themselves from falling into further suffering, more suffering. You're probably aware of that news coming out of Thailand. We are here because we have a lot of Thai visitors and Thai monks living here in the monastery, and people ask, oh, how is it possible somebody could kill so many people and so many young children? That man in northeast Thailand who did that, such a tragedy and such an extreme action for a human being to do, totally out of the blue, you could say uncalled for, just young children being murdered where they slept. It's a very unusual experience. So people are wondering, how can that happen? This is how karma takes place. It begins with the underlying tendency. So, I don't know that man or the particular situation, but if somebody leaves anger unaddressed in their mind over and over again, it becomes what we call an underlying tendency. They're just primed to get angry because they've got angry before, and then they're ready to do it again, fall into that habit. And a lot of karma we do in life is habitual. And if there's no mindfulness or wisdom brought to bear on that process, they're not careful with themselves, well, these tendencies can become stronger and stronger. Then when the conditions are right, so in this case, this man is an ex-policeman. He was found guilty of using drugs, possessing drugs. He's a drug user. So he became very angry. He lost his job. He went to court. I imagine there were a whole number of different conditions happening, causes and conditions in his life happening to produce more and more anger in him. And then the final sort of trigger is he takes more drugs, more amphetamines, which obviously had a very bad effect on his mind and took away his judgment, his mindfulness, his wisdom, his sense of awareness of what is right and wrong, good or bad, and he went totally out of control. In terms of karma, this is probably building up over a long period of time. Unfortunately, nobody realized, because often this is internal, isn't it, for human beings? We internally are dealing with all kinds of karma. If we don't get the right inputs, we're not practicing, we haven't heard the Dhamma perhaps, then anything can happen. And in this case it did, with terrible results. Karma is like this. It starts as small moments, maybe small thoughts, negative intentions that go unaddressed, and they gradually solidify into something more solid and come up more and more often until maybe somebody is at bursting point, ready to explode, ready to take it out, their anger out on other people in kind of blind, we call it blind rage, where you just got no self-control, self-awareness, and you're just in a very destructive mood. This is the value of the practice. You see it in times like this, the value of practicing patience with your own moods, practicing sila, so you become much more aware of your intention, and then you start to put a limit on your actions. You may have very negative, angry thoughts come up, but you have a certain limit where you say, I'm not going to act on this, I'm not going to speak on this. It may still be present in your mind, but you have some other qualities there that you've put into place, some discipline, determination, some clarity where you say, well, I'm not going to act in this. However bad my thoughts are, I'm not going to hurt the people around me verbally or physically, say. And now you see the value of practice. The more and more you practice, the more you recognize how other people are caught up into making karma, and you see your own tendencies to make negative karma. But then you also see the value of developing wholesome karma, the wholesome karma of mindfulness, of patience, of sila, restraint. And of course, wholesome karma brings its result. When you practice the wholesome karma, whether it's through meditation, keeping precepts, mindfulness in daily life, it brings its result. The Buddha said result of keeping sila is your mind starts to feel more at ease. And it may take time. If you've got very deeply ingrained habits of negativity, then to tame that and bring that under control may take time. But the result is there to be experienced. And the result is one of lack of remorse. If you don't act on your negative tendencies of greed, anger, delusion, then you don't have to feel guilty or have experienced remorse. So the benefits of keeping sila is you have a certain sense of ease of mind, freedom from remorse, because you haven't done things that hurt yourself, hurt others. And that experience deepens over time. The longer you practice sila, the more you practice mindfulness and start abandoning some of the more seriously negative intentions you might experience, the better you feel. People who practice sila through their life become happier and happier. You could quote scientific studies on this, or personal observations, or just your observation of yourself. But I think if you watch and look closely at your own mind, your own experience, you'll notice when you keep precepts, your mind is happier. Freedom from remorse, freedom from aversion, self-criticism. But it has to be done with mindfulness. And when you're mindful, you know you're keeping a precept, say you're letting go of the intention to kill, to harm, or to say things that are untrue or malicious and so on. When you do it with mindfulness, you know what you're doing and why. And so it's a very powerful good karma. And that training in mindfulness supports deeper mindfulness that you practice when you meditate, which is even more powerful good karma. Because as you meditate and you experience some states of real calm and stillness, that only reveals more clearly to you the negativity of greed, anger and delusion and the suffering of it. And if it's really revealed, it's really clear to you, you don't want to hold on to those intentions anymore. You're ready to let them go. You're ready to say no to greed because you know it's only going to lead you to more suffering. You're ready to say no to anger because you know it leads to more suffering. This is what we call wisdom in Buddhism. The clarity where you really see and know your own mind, your thoughts, your intentions, and you cultivate and preserve the good ones and then abandon the negative ones. These states of stillness that help show us the harm, the suffering that comes from kilesa, ultimately they also show us that karma itself, there's no person there. It's not like you're born and you're always going to be bad person, good person, this person, that kind of person. Because as you practice mindfulness more clearly, you're seeing the individual moments of karma, meaning from moment to moment your mental states are changing. You may have an unskillful mental state arise, but then you can bring up a skillful mental state to counter it. So you may notice you're becoming very agitated, stressed or angry, but then you can introduce a moment of mindfulness, maybe turn to the breath or bring up a wholesome reflection such as loving kindness, or think of the Buddha, or think of something that makes you mindful, and the initial unskillful mind state fades away. And then you can see that your mind is a place for practice, and it's not that any of these negative karmic tendencies are fixed or destined or that they have to be there. They can be abandoned. And this is proving what the Buddha said. Human beings can abandon greed, anger and delusion. It may take some time. It takes effort for sure. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not, but it can be done. A very positive, optimistic kind of teaching. And the Buddha used that beautiful simile, which tomorrow night is the full moon night, I just came out to the hall just now and saw the full moon. It looks very beautiful tonight. It's almost full tonight. Tomorrow is the full moon. But the Buddha said, the one who sees unwholesome mental states and then abandons them, their mind brightens like the moon coming out from behind the clouds. And this is the beauty of the Dhamma, the amazingness of the Dhamma, the wonders of the Dhamma, is that human beings can change for the better. We always have that opportunity. We need to listen to the Dhamma or read the Dhamma and then draw it into our heart and then practice with it. But we can change our karma as we understand it, become clearer in our mind. We can change our karma for the better. And we should, because it will be for our benefit and the benefit of others. One friend of mine once said, he said, I don't know how long it's going to take. I've got so much bad karma, but I'm willing to try and I'm willing to do it. And I'll just keep going until the job is done. That sounds like a good attitude, the right attitude. We undermine our own efforts or make it harder for ourselves because we say, oh, I've got so much bad karma, so much anger, so much desire, I'm no good. So then, of course, we don't even want to try. We don't even want to begin. But if you have some real faith in the Buddha, you can say, well, the Buddha saw quite clearly human beings can change their karma, change their whole mental experience for the better. So why not? Why not give it a go? Yes, it may take time. Yes, it will take effort, but it can be done. So why not? So this is what we've been practicing through the Vasa in one form or another. Obviously there's many aspects of the practice, but it centers around this, working to purify the mind, improve the mind, abandon greed, anger, delusion, and cultivate the wholesome qualities, sila, samadhi, panya. The more we can do that, the better for us. So for those of you who've been practicing diligently last 3 months, I give you my anumodana and appreciation. I hope you can see that it's been worthwhile, something good. And I encourage you all to keep doing it. Don't just stop just because it's the end of the range retreat. That's just one of those sort of conventions of the world. It's just convenient to have retreats starting and then finishing. But really, every day is our retreat. So why not carry on practicing? So I'll leave the Dhamma talk there.